guys, so today we're going to be talking about measuring. It is important to measure correctly in your recipe for a couple of reasons. First, it helps the texture of your recipe. So if you are measuring incorrectly, your recipe could be too dry, it could be too runny, too sticky. It affects the taste of your recipe. If you accidentally mix up a teaspoon of something for a tablespoon of something, as you can see, those are two huge measurements. It will affect the taste. Maybe you won't even be able to eat it. It also affects the appearance of your recipe. So if you are measuring something incorrectly, like cinnamon, I had a group once that made banana bread, and they measured, instead of 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, they measured 1/4 cup of cinnamon, and their banana bread turned out very, very dark brown, like a brownie. So it may affect the overall appearance of the recipe. It also affects the way it rises. So we've talked about before the purpose of baking soda and baking powder. These make your recipe rise as it's baking in the oven. And if you measure too much of these ingredients, your recipe will rise and rise and rise to the point where it explodes. If you don't measure enough of these ingredients, it will be very flat. Okay, so measuring is very important when you're preparing food. So first, it's important to remember that you will be coming across a lot of abbreviations when you're cooking. A lot of recipes use abbreviations. A lot of people, when they give you a recipe, will use abbreviations. So it's important to know the difference between them. Tablespoon is abbreviated with capital T or capital TBSP. Teaspoon is abbreviated lowercase t or lowercase tsp. Quart is abbreviated QT. Pint is abbreviated PT. Gallon is abbreviated GAL. Ounce is abbreviated OZ. Cup is abbreviated with a C. And pound is abbreviated LB. Okay, so it's really important not to mix up those abbreviations, because like I said before, there's a big difference between a teaspoon of something and a tablespoon of something. Okay, so I want to go over some different measuring utensils with you and how to properly measure using those utensils. So the first one is the liquid measuring cup. This is the liquid measuring cup. It's used to measure liquids. And when you're measuring a liquid, you need to make sure that you put it on a flat surface and you bend down and look at it at eye level. So that's how you are going to get the most exact measurement. So examples of liquids that you could measure with a liquid measuring cup could include water, oil, milk, juices, sauces, syrups, all different kinds of things that you could pour. So for example, if I needed half a cup of this oil, this is canola oil, I'm going to pour this in till I get to the half cup line, and then I bend down and look at it at eye level, and that's how I get an exact measurement. Okay, next we're going to be talking about measuring cups. These are dry measuring cups. These come in different sizes, so there's a 1/4, 1/3, half cup, and 1 cup. And when you're measuring with dry measuring cups, you always use this utensil. And this is called the leveler, and I believe Mrs. LeClaire calls this the straight edge spatula. So either one, it does the same purpose. So when you are measuring dry ingredients, you are going to measure them, and we'll take flour, for example. You're going to take your dry measuring cup and scoop it so that it's overflowing. And then you tap your measuring cup once, and this settles any air pockets that are in your measuring cup, and then you level right over the container away from your body. And this will give you an exact measurement of a dry ingredient. So in dry ingredients would include flour, sugar, powdered sugar, cocoa powder, ingredients that are fine and powdery. They also measure moist ingredients. So moist ingredients could be Crisco, for example, or brown sugar. Brown sugar is white sugar, and they have added molasses to it, and it gives it that sticky texture to it, and it's sweeter. Okay, so when you're measuring brown sugar, this would be an example that you would pack. So brown sugar, Crisco, peanut butter, cream cheese, mayonnaise, all of those ingredients have a moist texture to them, and because of that texture, you need to pack them. So if we needed 1/3 of a cup of this brown sugar, I would scoop this up with my dry measuring cup, and then I would take a spoon and I would pack this down and try to get as much brown sugar in there as I can. Okay, so I really want to make sure that I pack it down pretty hard. Then I would take my leveler, just like before, and level away from myself. And then when I'm finished, I would tip this over on a paper plate, and it should hold the shape of the measuring cup or look like a little mini sandcastle. That's how you know when you've done it correctly, is when it holds the shape of the cup. Okay, if you don't have it hold the shape of the cup, you don't have enough brown sugar, so you should remeasure. Another example of, like I said, of a moist ingredient would be Crisco. So this is Crisco, and you would use a rubber scraper to get this ingredient out of the container and into your dry measuring cup. So let's say I needed 1/2 cup of Crisco. I'm going to scoop this out with my rubber scraper, and I'm going to use the rubber scraper to push down into my dry measuring cup and get as much in there as I can. Okay, then I'm going to take the flat side of my rubber scraper and I'm going to scrape off the extra right off the top, and then that goes back in the container. Okay, so this would be an exact measurement of 1/2 cup of Crisco. Now to get this out, you're not going to be able to just plop this in your recipe. You're going to use your rubber scraper again. So you're going to put this in your dry measuring cup and you'll do like a big old circle, and it comes out in pretty much one big clump. Okay, so that's how you would measure any of the moist ingredients like Crisco, peanut butter, mayonnaise, sour cream, cream cheese, okay, all of those kinds of things. Okay, it also can measure solid ingredients. So dry measuring cups can also measure things like chocolate chips, nuts, chopped up fruits, chopped up vegetables, oatmeal, okay, Rice Krispies, those kinds of ingredients. So liquid measuring cup measures liquids, dry measuring cups measure dry ingredients, solid ingredients, and moist solid ingredients. Okay, next we're going to talk about measuring spoons. And measuring spoons also come in 4 sizes. You have the 1 tablespoon, 1 teaspoon, 1/2 teaspoon, and 1/4 teaspoon. And these, it's very important to measure correctly because these measure small amounts of pretty much any ingredient. But because it measures small amounts, a lot of times those small amounts of ingredients are very strong. So if you think of seasonings, for example, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, cayenne pepper, those are all very strong. So you wouldn't want to mix up those measurements. It also measures small amounts of leveling agents like we talked about before, the baking soda and the baking powder, and this is what makes your recipe rise. These 2 ingredients are unique because they have a built-in leveler in the container. So this has that little cardboard flap here that you would use to stick your measuring spoon in, scoop it up, and then I would scrape it right along the edge of that cardboard flap and it levels it for you. For the baking powder, it comes in a can and it has this metal bar that you would use to level it. So I would scoop it up, scrape it up against that metal bar, and it levels it. Okay? Next, we're going to talk about liquid ingredients. When you're measuring small amounts of liquid ingredients like vanilla extracts, milk, water, oil, it's important to measure those ingredients over a custard cup. And custard cups are used to check an egg, but you could also use them for this purpose when you're measuring small amounts, so that in case you pour a little too much of that ingredient in, it's in your custard cup and not in your bowl of ingredients. So if I needed 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, I would just pour it over the custard cup first to make sure I don't pour too much in there. Okay, next we're going to talk about sifting ingredients. So there are 2 different ingredients that you can sift. In sifting ingredients, you could sift flour or powdered sugar. And I actually don't have a sifter. A real sifter looks like a coffee can that has a handle on it that you would turn, and the ingredient would go through the sifter to break up any chunks that are in that dry ingredient, or add air to that ingredient. So because I don't have a sifter, I use the strainer. So when you're sifting ingredients, you're gonna put down a piece of wax paper, and because I mentioned flour is an ingredient that you can sift, you're going to dump some flour. Let's say I want 1/4 of a cup here. I'm gonna dump some flour through my strainer, and I'm going to use this wooden spoon to just kind of push it through. Okay, and you can see how fine it's coming out the bottom. It's adding air to this ingredient. And then I would measure it like I did before by scooping it up so it's overflowing, tapping it once, and leveling it off. So you could do this again for flour or powdered sugar. Those are pretty much the only 2 ingredients that you would be able to sift because of the texture of them. Okay, so that is measuring. So make sure that you answer the questions that I posted, and I will post the answers to those questions tomorrow. We missed you guys. I hope you guys are doing okay. Bye.